Hey guys, it's Paul from online Sax Academy, and today's lesson we're doing another classic Herbie Hancock tune. This time it's Watermelon Man. So Herbie Hancock originally wrote this tune in 1962 for the Taking Off album, and later on in 1973 he reworked it in a really big way for the amazing Headhunters album, which was when he was using more electronic instruments. Today we're going to be learning the tune as it was played on the original recording, but I'd really recommend checking out both versions because it's amazing to hear the differences between them. So as ever, you can get yourself the free PDF performance and backing tracks from the link down in the description below. And if you enjoyed today's lesson and you find those resources useful, there's also a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page. And of course, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future lessons. So we're going to be doing this tune in 3 ways. For the beginner version, it's just the melody. And then for the intermediate version, we have the melody, one chorus of a fairly simple solo, and then back out with the melody again. And for the advanced version, it's the same structure, but the solo is a bit more advanced. So Watermelon Man is what's known as a 16-bar blues. We start with chord 1 for 4 bars, we go to chord 4 for 2 bars, back to chord 1 for 2 bars. So far, that's exactly the same as a 12-bar blues, but then this is where the change comes. Instead of just going 5-4-1, we have chord 5 for a bar, chord 4 for a bar, and then we repeat that another 2 times, 5-4-5-4, and then we finish with 2 bars of chord 1. Now the melody basically uses what is sometimes referred to as the major blues scale, or another way of thinking about it is you have your major pentatonic scale in the key, so D major pentatonic for altos and G major pentatonic for tenors, but we're also going to include the flattened third. Now if you rearrange these notes, this is also known as just the B blues scale for altos and the E blues scale for tenors. But because our tonal centre is in the major key, that's why we would call it a D major blues scale rather than say a B minor blues scale for altos, for example. So I would get used to running your fingers through that scale. It's definitely going to help when you come to improvising, but it's also going to help when you come to learn this melody as well, particularly the second 8-bar section, which is a lot trickier than the first 8 bars. Okay, so here's the beginner version of Watermelon Man. So for the intermediate solo, when you're on the first chord, you've got a choice. You can either just use the blues scale, or you can use the major pentatonic or that major blues scale. When you get to chord 4, it's quite nice to use the blues scale, but you can use the chord tones that are within that chord. When we get to the chord 5, chord 4 section, a nice idea you can try is to use the major pentatonic when you're on chord 5 and the minor pentatonic when you're on chord 4. Another thing to try when you're improvising on tunes like this is to take a small musical idea, a small musical phrase, and try to develop it. So that can be done by repeating it but changing it slightly, taking the rhythm of it and then moving those notes around, creating sequences. These kind of things is going to give a lot more coherence to your lines and give something for the listener to follow along with, so it doesn't sound like you're just kind of moving up and down random scales. If you'd like some help for the kinds of things you could play using a blues scale, a previous video of mine is a blues scale workout which has 36 phrases, and that's also available in all 12 keys as well. Along with that, I have my pentatonic patterns workout, which will get you really comfortable with any pentatonic scale that you want to work on. Both of those videos are linked down below as well. Okay, so here's the intermediate version of Watermelon Man. Alright, so next up we're going to have the advanced version. Now when I was listening to the original, it was around about 130 BPM, so that's what I set my advanced level version at. Now 130 BPM is one of those slightly more awkward tempos because it's quite fast when you want to do some double time or semi-quaver runs, but if you just stick to more quavery kind of lines, it can feel a little bit slow sometimes for the more advanced players. So I've tried to create a balance between my 8th note lines and my 16th note lines. So one thing you can try, if you know some language, if you know any 2-5-1 licks, that kind of thing, is when you get to the second 8-bar section of the song, when, for example, you're on chord 5, you can actually split that and imagine it was a short 2-5. And then you can try using some language, imagining you're outlining a 2-5 rather than just a 5 chord for a whole bar. And you can do the same on the 4 chord as well. You can turn that into a 2-5. Now I've put quite a few double time lines in this example solo just to see the kind of things you could do, but of course it's up to your own personal taste as to how much of that stuff you want to put in. More notes isn't necessarily better. And as ever, the primary focus is keeping a good steady rhythm and playing with a nice tone. Alright, so here's the advanced version of Watermelon Man. This is another very popular one at jam sessions, so if you'd like to get out there and try this with other people, I'd really recommend you memorising this one. And just a reminder, if you enjoy today's lesson, you want to support the channel, the link to the Buy Me a Coffee page is down below. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alright guys, I'll see you next week.